She thought she was the last human alive, until her alien captor became her only hope for love, survival, and the future of two worlds. In the twilight of Earth's last breathable years, humanity wasn't thriving, it was clawing. Cities had crumbled under the weight of decades-long resource wars. Oceans had turned into acid lakes, skies were more ash than air, and the global power grid had fractured into feudal war zones. Hope had become a currency few could afford, and trust was a dead language. But amid the rot, in a bunker buried beneath what used to be the Rocky Mountains, a woman named Ilara breathed and endured. Ilara was not a soldier. She wasn't a politician, or scientist, or savior.
She had been a schoolteacher, once. Before the collapse.
Before the climate scorched away her town and killed her husband in a dust storm so violent it carved new canyons into the land. Before her skin learned to taste poison in the wind. What she had now was survival. And that, she did better than most. She scavenged, moved silently between the wreckage of old civilizations, her boots soft against glass-cracked asphalt. She learned the language of rats, the warnings in their frantic scrambles. Learned when the sky turned too still, it was time to run. And she never stayed in one place too long. Not until the day she found the ship. It wasn't massive. Not some looming alien mothership from the movies. It was small, triangular, half buried under the skeleton of an old solar farm in Arizona. At first, she thought it was another drone wreck, one of Earth's final military toys. But the materials were wrong. The angles too perfect. It pulsed with a low hum that vibrated her ribs and triggered something ancient in her DNA. Curiosity overcame caution. Inside the ship, it was colder than she expected. Light rippled like fluid across metallic walls. And in the center, cocooned in a gel-like cradle, was him. The alien. She didn't have a word for what she felt. Not fear. Not awe. Something primal. His body was humanoid, taller than any man she'd seen. Skin the color of storm clouds, faintly luminous. He was wounded, veins pulsing a dim silver, his breathing shallow. There were burn marks across his chest, as if he'd been shot mid-warp. Her first instinct was to run. But she didn't. Instead, Ilara stayed. She brought food. Water. She watched him, studied the way his eyelids twitched, the odd tattoos along his neck that glowed when she entered. And one day he awoke. No words. Just breath. Just wide, mercury-colored eyes staring into hers. He called himself Kale. They spoke in gestures at first, primitive, cautious. But Kale was smarter than she could have imagined. He had a device, a translation unit that adapted quickly. Within days, he spoke English better than most warlords she'd dodged in the wastes. And the stories he told. Kale came from a star system light years away, fleeing an empire that hunted his kind for their genetic adaptability. He was a warrior, bred in combat but tired of war. His people, extinct now he believed, had once considered Earth sacred. A fertile world filled with life. Now, he barely recognized it. "Your planet is wounded," he said one night, as they sat beneath the stars. "But not dead. Like you." It wasn't love at first. How could it be? They were two species, two relics of dying civilizations. But survival breeds intimacy. And Kale treated her with a reverence she hadn't felt in years. No hunger in his eyes. No cruelty. Only recognition. As if her pain spoke a language his soul understood. They fixed the ship together. Days turned into weeks. And the more time they spent in that forgotten vessel, the more the walls felt less like metal and more like home. Then came the night the warlords found them. A brutal gang, outfitted in scavenged tech and bone armor. They tracked the ship's energy signature. Wanted it for themselves. Ilara fought. So did Kale. Blood spilled, hers theirs. But Kale unleashed something terrible. His arms cracked with lightning. His eyes turned white. He moved like a ghost, like death wrapped in grace. When it was over, the ground steamed with heat, and nothing remained of the invaders but ash. Ilara, broken and burned, collapsed in his arms. And in that moment, Kale held her like she was the last beautiful thing in the universe. Not as a fragile human, but as something sacred. They made love that night. Not out of lust. Out of desperation. Out of a need to believe something could still be born in a world drowning in decay. Weeks later, Ilara woke with sickness in her stomach and something deeper in her blood. The ship's medical scanner confirmed it. She was pregnant. Kale was stunned. His species weren't supposed to be genetically compatible with humans. But then again, Kale wasn't like the rest. And neither, it seemed, was she. The pregnancy was rapid. Not months. Weeks. Her body changed faster than biology allowed. Kale monitored everything, his warrior hands turned healer. They left the ship behind and moved underground, into the ancient ruins of a biotech lab. There, surrounded by dead machines and shattered glass, Ilara prepared to give birth. The child came screaming into a world that had no name for him.
He was not human. Not alien. Something else.
His skin shimmered between colors. His eyes held the galaxy in their reflection. And when he cried, machines stirred to life, recognizing something buried in his genes.
He was the first. The first hybrid.
The child didn't age normally. By the end of the first month, he was walking.
Speaking. Understanding.
Kale believed it was the Earth's atmosphere, the radiation, the stress, it was accelerating his growth. But Ilara feared something more. A prophecy Kale had once mentioned in passing. Of a child born from dying bloodlines, destined to wake a sleeping empire. They named him Riven. And Riven was changing everything. Where he walked, dead vines bloomed. Old drones reactivated. The land seemed to bend subtly to his will. He wasn't just a child.
He was a key.
One night, as the sky split open with auroras that hadn't been seen in decades, a signal echoed through the airwaves.
Not human. Not Kale's people. Something older.
The seed has awakened. We are coming.
Kale paled. They found us, he whispered.
The architects.
Who are they? Ilara asked.
Kale's voice trembled. The ones who built the stars. Ilara held her child tighter. Outside, the wind shifted.
The earth quaked.
And somewhere above, hidden behind broken clouds and poisoned air, something enormous moved through the void. They were no longer alone. And Earth would never be the same again.
The sky groaned. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't the wind.
It was something deeper, more primal, a low, resonant pulse that vibrated the bones of the Earth itself. The clouds churned unnaturally, like bruises blooming in reverse, and beneath them, Ilara stood with her child in her arms, her breath fogging despite the heat. Riven, the hybrid child born of human and alien blood, was still and silent, his strange eyes focused on the heavens. Beside them, Kale had already taken up his spear-like weapon, though both of them knew it wouldn't be enough. The architects had arrived. They descended not in ships but in geometries, shapes that tore open reality like a curtain. Golden tetrahedrons folded into cubes that rotated in impossible patterns, hovering above the dead deserts of Earth like the judgment of ancient gods.
No smoke. No fire. Just presence.
The kind of presence that made machines scream and birds fall from the sky mid-flight. Kale dropped to one knee, not in submission, but in remembrance. They are not gods, he whispered. But they were once treated as such. Before the galaxies rebelled.
Ilara clutched Riven tighter.
The boy hadn't spoken in hours. His skin glowed faintly, and the sand beneath his feet turned glassy, as if unwilling to hold him. They know he's the key, Kale continued, rising. They'll take him.
No, Ilara said, her voice steady. They'll try. But they won't.
What followed wasn't a battle in the traditional sense. It wasn't missiles or bullets or laser beams. The architects communicated in waves of influence, pulses that erased memories, rewrote intentions, turned rebels into disciples with a whisper. The first wave hit the old world satellite towers. Rusted military bunkers burst to life, their systems overridden, blinking violently with ancient codes repurposed by alien minds. The second wave came for Earth's remaining strongholds. Warlords vanished. The oceans boiled along their edges. The world was being rewritten. But in a forgotten lab beneath Denver, something resisted. Ilara had always been clever, not in the way universities celebrated, but in the way survivors needed to be. She had spent years reading old-world codebooks, understanding quantum signaling, reverse engineering broken AI fragments from corpses in the wastes. She had fed Kale human myths and Earth's dark history. And with every tale, every memory, the ship they had abandoned, the small vessel that brought Kale, began adapting. It had recognized the child. It had recognized Earth. Because Riven wasn't just the first hybrid.
He was the fulcrum.
The architects wanted to integrate him into the source, a galactic neural lattice that spanned entire clusters, absorbing species, folding them into one mind, one will. A utopia through control. A heaven forged through surrender. Kale had seen it before. Planets reborn into perfect equilibrium. No war, no crime, no individuality. Just silence. But Riven was different. He was born of chaos. Of love. Of a species that had fought itself more brutally than any alien ever could, and still survived. In the depths of the mountain bunker, As the architect's geometry warped the skies, Ilara and Kale interfaced with the ship once more. It responded to Riven's presence like a heartbeat returning to a corpse.
Its walls bent, reshaped, reformed. It didn't just power up. It evolved.
It took Ilara's knowledge of Earth, Kale's biology, and Riven's unique DNA, and became something new.
A living weapon. No guns. No targeting systems. Just thought.
Riven stepped forward, no longer the baby she had cradled, no longer the toddler who bloomed flowers with his breath. He was older now, his growth accelerated again, mentally and physically. His voice was deeper, laced with tones no human vocal cords could replicate. "They are calling," he said, without emotion. "They want me to submit."
"And will you?" Ilara asked. "No," he replied, turning to her. "Because I know what you gave up. And I know who I am now." For the first time, Kale smiled in fear and awe. He has chosen. The ship rose, not through engines but through will. The earth cracked open, magma cooling instantly in its shadow. And in the sky, the tetrahedrons paused, as if aware they had miscalculated. Riven projected himself outward, not just physically, but spiritually. His thoughts became waves. His heartbeat, a frequency. And within that wave, he carried Ilara's love, Kale's sacrifice, and humanity's most primal scream, the need to remain free. He didn't attack. He sang. A frequency older than stars, filled with chaos and emotion and illogic. Something the architects had long abandoned. Something they feared. Individuality. The effect was instant. The nearest architect construct cracked. Then another. The geometries faltered, patterns broke. The lattice mind, so perfect, so complete, staggered as a contradiction was introduced into its core programming, a will that would not be overwritten. From the surface of Earth, Riven became a beacon. The ship wrapped around him like armor, organic and adaptive, and with every breath, he pulled more of the lattice apart. Kale, standing beside Ilara, whispered, "He is remaking their code." But Riven wasn't erasing the architects. He was freeing them. And that was the final weapon they hadn't foreseen, compassion born from suffering. Ilara fell to her knees, exhausted, bleeding from her nose. The connection between mother and child still strong. She felt every choice, every burst of memory Riven used as ammunition. Her husband's death. The dust storm. The loneliness. Her love for Kale. Her fear of the future. All of it became part of the signal. The architects broke. Not in fire, but in awakening. Their geometries ceased rotation. Cracks formed and light spilled out, not in violence but in understanding. And then they left. No words. No vengeance. Just absence. The skies cleared for the first time in decades. Rain fell. And Earth breathed again. Riven descended, the ship dissolving into dust. His body still glowed faintly, but his face looked older now. Human in some lights. Alien in others. Kale embraced him, then stepped back, knowing what came next. "I won't stay," Riven said. Ilara's heart cracked. "Why?" "They'll return one day," he replied. "Not in war, but in search of what I became. And others will need me. Out there. Beyond this sky." She walked to him, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "Will I see you again?" Riven touched her forehead. "You'll see me every time someone chooses freedom over control. Every time a mother protects her child. Every time a world dares to survive." And then he rose. Not in a ship. Not in a beam of light. He simply rose. Ascending into the upper stratosphere until he vanished in the morning sun. Ilara collapsed in Kale's arms. She had survived a dying world. She had loved across species. And she had birthed not a savior, but a legacy. In the years that followed, Earth began to heal. Slowly. The poisoned oceans withdrew. Plants returned, tentative and wild. And humans, scattered stubborn humans, emerged from the shadows, carrying the story of a woman, an alien warrior, and the child who broke the sky. They called it the Age of Hybrid Light. And Ilara? She became the myth. The survivor who gave hope to the stars.